Today we're going to be visiting Fort Richardson, Texas, which is not only a state historic site with some amazing history, but also a real, honest-to-goodness state park. It has all the things that you would expect of a state park, with recreation opportunities, things to do, things to see. For example, it has camping, like RV camping. It has all kinds of sites for that, pull-throughs and back-ends. It has multi-use trails, quite a long multi-use trail. One of them is an 18-mile round trip. It has fishing, including trout fishing. There's a great big old quarry that has trout in it. Now the limit is 5 fish per day per person, but that's still plenty fun. And then they have regular fishing at a couple of reservoirs there. Swimming at one of the reservoirs, and they have wildlife watching. So all the things that you would expect of a Texas state park you can find at Fort Richardson, which is just 60 miles northwest of Fort Worth. Well, here we are again, heading out to visit a fort on the Texas Forts Trail. Now this fort today is going to be a little bit different than the ones we've seen in the past. Those that we've visited before were forts that were started right after the Mexican-American War and then were abandoned at the beginning of the Civil War. This post was actually established well after the Civil War in 1867 and flourished until 1878. It was there for the Indian Wars. While General Custer was fighting the Sioux and the Lakotas and the Apaches up north, down here they were fighting the Kiowas and the Comanches. A lot of interesting things happened at this fort. At one time, this was, with regard to the number of people stationed there, the largest fort in North America of U.S. military people. So let's go visit Fort Richardson and see what it's all about.
Down on the square, they were playing cards I think upstairs. Don't know who actually cheated, but either Doc Holliday or one of the soldiers cheated, and so he shot one of the soldiers. So then they start marching on town, and that's when he runs with Kate and gets out of town.
Wow, that's the kind of stuff they put in the movies, stuff like that.
Yeah. People were calling him a coward for running, but what are you going to do when an army's marching on you?
Well, that was probably in the 70s too, and I'm guessing because because he and Wyatt Earp met in like 73 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, here we are finally at Fort Richardson Historic Park or Historic Site. Fort Richardson was named for Union General Israel B. Richardson, who died at the Battle of Antietam during the Civil War. Originally, this fort was set to be in another county, but then they decided to move it here because it seemed to have more of the resources that they need. Now, as I like to mention, this fort was established after the Civil War in 1867. Most of the other forts in Texas didn't have much life after the Civil War. They were established around 1849 or 1851, and they then sometimes were reoccupied for a little while after the Civil War, but they were all abandoned during the Civil War. This one was set up 1867 pretty much as part of Reconstruction and the Indian Wars. Now, a lot of things happened at this fort. We're going to talk about it some more later, but during its existence, it went from being a 5-company post, which is still a good-sized post, and of the 6 cav, to a post of 10 or more companies, and there were many different regiments. In 1872, it was listed as the largest U.S. Army installation in the country with over 1,000 men. Unlike most Army posts, especially frontier posts, there was already a town here before the post was built. And so with over 1,000 people in the post and all the civilians in the town, this was a big, bustling community, unlike some of the other outposts. And so Fort Richardson
thrived. It did pretty well up until about 1878. So let's go to a different location and talk about some more stuff. Many of the buildings on this post were reconstructed during the Depression by the CCC. In 1936, the state of Texas was part of a big program to build state parks. Almost all the state parks in the state of Texas had some construction done to them during this time. Here, they reconstructed some of the buildings from the post, but there are buildings here that are original. But behind me is an example of the type of building that might be used for the senior non-commissioned officers or the bachelor officers' quarters. All right, and that's just really what this is, the kind of buildings that they had. And all right, let's go to the next one. Now, contrary to popular belief, when General Sherman, the general of the Army, came to visit this post, he didn't stay here. He came with his own troops and his own camp, which was set up east of here. And he had his own tent and everything. He was very much a field soldier. He didn't have a problem living in a tent. And so he didn't stay here. He did come here and would eat dinner with the commanding officer, but he stayed in his own camp that he had set up a little ways away. We can talk a little bit about Fort Richardson at this point. When it was established in '67, it was set up as an occupational fort. That is to say, it was here to occupy the state that the Union had just conquered, okay, the losers. Texas did not become again a part of the United States until 1870. At that point, the mission of this fort changed from an occupational fort to one for protecting all the citizens and people of this area from the Indians and for the Indian Wars. Here we are at the east end of the parade ground. Behind me you see things like the flagpole, the hospital, and clear to the end you see the commanding officer's quarters right there at the end of the parade ground. So this is kind of the big shot of the post. Imagine it lined with all kinds of buildings on either side of this parade ground right here, where they would drill and they'd practice and they would do all kinds of things. This was the center of the post, the center of activity. So there you go. I'm kind of in the middle of a residential and industrial business area that's kind of adjacent to Fort Richardson. By all accounts, it doesn't look like part of the fort, but yet behind me are the ruins of the Quartermaster's building and the reconstructed Commissary. And what they did was they took the ruins of of everything, and half of it they reconstructed. And so that's the Commissary building, and then the ruins of the Quartermaster's offices and things like that. And so it's logical that those two things would be close to each other. But here it is, just kind of sitting in somebody's backyard. Pretty cool, huh? Well, it was decided that rather than send them off somewhere or even here to try them with a military tribunal, since it was citizens of the United States, of the community who were impacted by this raid, they decided to send these guys to Jacksboro and have them tried in a civilian court and dealt with that way, and dealt with by the state of Texas instead of the federal government. These were the first Indians ever tried in a civilian court in the United States. They were ultimately taken to Huntsville, and Satanta one day decided he wasn't gonna stay there anymore, and he jumped from an upper story prison hospital window and killed himself. The story of Satanta is exactly the story that McMurtry used for the character of Blue Duck in Lonesome Dove. Standing behind the hospital in front of the morgue. Yes, every post had to have a morgue where we had to put things, I guess. This is a good time to talk about possibly the actual post cemetery. We saw the graves of the two children behind the officers' quarters. The actual post cemetery was located about a quarter mile east of here. Those graves were exhumed of the 37 known fallen soldiers from this post and reinterred in Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery. How about that? All right, this might be my favorite structure here on Fort Richardson. It's my favorite for a couple of reasons. One is it's the natural ruins. The CCC didn't do anything to it. You can really get a feel for what it looked like before they fixed it, improved it, or whatever you want to say. And also, its function makes it my favorite, because this was the guardhouse, which it served two functions. One, it was something for the guards to operate out of in inclement weather or whatever. There were always guards on duty on the post looking out for Indians or whatever. There were exterior and interior guards, but you had the guardhouse, and there was always someone here to guard the prisoners or to be sergeant of the guard and be over it and however things were working, okay? And one of my things about it that I like, and come here real closely and you'll see that what they had here where they would have metal gates or metal doors and things like that, and the prisoner would be in here, and well, how did the prisoner take care of his natural business? Well, at the front of each door, there's a indentation, a trough, if you will, and that's where his business was taken care of, or swept out of, or washed out of, whatever. Yes, that little part right there, that's a depression. That's the whole bathroom. That's the whole thing right there for the guard. Seems a little medieval, doesn't it? But that's the way it was for the longest time. You can see that pretty much on all of these, and that to me is just fascinating, that we can look back in history like that and see what the conditions actually were. How about that? Guardhouse, powder magazine. Beyond that, or in that general vicinity, were the stables. Walls of the powder magazine are 4 feet thick. It's designed to be a massive safe. In this particular one, the door was 4 inches thick steel. It is unbelievably durable. There is graffiti carved in this thing, and I'm going to try to find out if some of it's maybe 19th century graffiti. I have no idea. But the powder magazine always seems to be the strongest, longest lasting structure on the post, and this post is so different.